Alright, starting it with this cover off. Sure seems like that's where my engine noise is coming from. Still some debris coming out of there. Still can't be convinced that that's not connecting rod noise. The oil level's good. Shut it down. I don't know whether or not that's connecting rod noise that I'm hearing there clanging, or whether or not it's one of these components here. And when I revved it up, still a lot of crap came out of there, which means that, yeah, I can actually see down inside these clutch packs, there's mouse crap, debris, and everything else in there. But it was nice to see that this clutch was actually doing what it's supposed to do. It was moving, tightening up on the other belt, and this one didn't do anything at first, but when I revved it up high, it did start to move, so that's promising, I guess. But that noise is what's really bothering me. It doesn't sound like a wholesome noise at all. So I'm going to see if I can vac out some more debris out of these clutch packs. That buzzing noise is a solenoid or a relay. It's making some noise in here. Now, I'm not sure if I've got damaged wiring in there or not. I mean, the mice have definitely chewed on the wiring, but amongst the other issues, it's actually running pretty easy. It seems to have good compression based on how easy it starts. Warmed it up some now, so it's not idling as smooth as it could be, but running. Still got those noises though in the engine or in that clutch pack. The clutch pack is definitely rattling like crazy, but I'm also not sure whether or not that's all of the noise. And the other thing is, I know the battery is junk, so I've been starting it off of my starter charger. But as soon as I kill the power from the starter charger, it dies. Which I would have thought that even with a dead battery, once the engine's running, that there'd be enough juice coming off of the... I'm assuming this uses some sort of a field coil or something to charge the battery as you're going along. I would have thought that that would have had enough juice to maintain the ignition system. So I might be wrong on that. Maybe with a dead battery it just doesn't have enough juice. But the other possibility is that there's just something wrong with the charging system, and that could be tied to the fact that I've got such problems here with the wiring. So I'm going to poke around with that wiring a little bit and see how that looks. And then that's probably all I'm going to do for today, because I'm going to try and read up online and get a little bit more information about this clutch system. I know from what I already read briefly that there's a special tool. It's about 55 bucks from the dealer, and I guess you can get it for as little as 35 bucks online. That's required to pull the clutch on this thing. I mean, I see a bolt here on the end. That'd be the obvious starting point, but I'm sure that there's a specific way you have to do this. And the only reason I'd want to pull, I mean, it actually appears to be working. The only reason I'd want to pull it really is to have it completely off and run the engine and see whether or not I've still got a knock sound with this off. Because if the engine sounds good with this off, that's great. If it doesn't, then that means I've got a motor knock. That is a whole nother issue to deal with. That I'm hoping I don't have to deal with. This cleaned up pretty well just from the belt rubbing up against it, running it a few times. It's smooth as glass, so there's just some light surface corrosion from sitting so long. And of course I know the belt's trash, but I don't want to buy a new belt for this thing until I feel a little bit better about the motor. So I'm going to mess around with the wiring. Well, you gotta love mice. Or hate them would probably be a better thing to say. This device right here, which I'm not even sure what it is, actually hooks onto this plastic piece right here. There's this slot like that. It's mounted like that. This whole plastic assembly, you take one screw out and it comes right out. But this was actually off of here. They had been chewing on this so much. This outer plastic or rubber cover just has all scarring from their teeth. And these two black wires that go to this device, they're completely bare of insulation for a couple inches, and even the metal strands had begun to be chewed through. And the way this was in there, they were pretty much twisted. So those two black wires right there were definitely shorted together. I'm not sure what they run to or where they run from, but I'm sure they shouldn't be together. Now the headlights were working on this, so I do know a couple of things. I know that this is the starter solenoid. Pretty sure of that because of the large wires that run. One comes right from the positive leg of the battery to one post, and then the other post goes this way, and it probably goes down to the starter motor. And then this plug right here plugs into it with two small wires that are chewed up. So those wires, I'm sure, probably go up to the in the wiring harness. Eventually they get over to the ignition switch. So there's probably 12 volts supposed to be on one side of that, and then one side gets grounded by the ignition switch. The starter switch. Or there's 12 volts goes through the switch and then comes to this through here, and then gets grounded by the other wire. Well, without a wiring diagram, kind of hard to figure it out. But what I can do is I can fix the obvious things and see if that changes anything. I'm repairing the wiring on the Kawasaki 400 Prarie, and depending on what type of damage it is, I've got different types of repairs. In this section over here, I had parts of the wire that was so badly chewed by the mice that some of the strands were damaged. So in those situations, I cut out the bad section and put a new piece of wire in, and then I use these butt connectors that have heat shrinkable tubing covering. So once I've got the butt connectors crimped, I heat it up and get that tubing to shrink. And then like in a situation like this, where this is a butt connector, you can disconnect it, the strands weren't damaged, just the outer jacket of the insulation was damaged. So then I slide heat shrinkable tubing over the outside of it and then heat it up and cover that up like that. And then, like in a situation like this one here, you can actually see this wire. They chewed the insulation very close to where it goes into the plug, which makes it kind of difficult to repair. So in a situation like that, what I do is I cut the wire back here, like I did on this one. I cut the wire back here, and then I slide a piece of heat shrink tubing over that and heat it up. So I've got a nice good protection on that, and then all I have to do is use a butt connector to reconnect these two wires back up. So I'm almost done here. Okay, I've finished fixing all the connections that I needed to fix. Now I'm just going to retape. I had removed all the tape from this wiring harness so I could get to the individual strands to repair them. Now I'm just going to retape all of this up. Right, the wiring is all repaired and everything's put back into a position where it's supposed to be. All I need now is a new battery. I think I'm dealing with two different kinds of noise here. I mean, there's definitely a rattling sound coming from the converter, but there's also a secondary noise that to me sounds like it's in the valve train. And the other thing I noticed about the motor is that when I try and accelerate it, it hesitates to come up to RPM. So what I'm suspecting is I think there's something wrong in the valve train, and I think since it's 2 intake valves and 2 exhaust valves, is probably the configuration, I think one or more valves is not working correctly. Can't be the timing chain, because if the chain was broken, the camshaft drive chain was broken, it wouldn't run at all. But it could be a valve seat that's come undone, or a broken valve seat. There's also at the exhaust, there's a strange little metallic squeak or ping. And I mean, it's coming out of, that sound's coming out of the exhaust, but I'm wondering if it's actually sound from inside that motor that's propagating out through the exhaust. It's a strange little noise I've never heard before.